All right, so one question. I had one question. I'm going to start with the first one today, and that is somebody asked me, can you explain the kata in Endgame, whether it was actually done for the movie or who choreographed it, and will we be doing that at a Sword Experience event at any time soon? Now, the kata that I had there was made up by myself and my teacher, Vernon Rieda, and what I learned by doing that kata, and which is what I tell people a lot of the time during a Sword Experience event, because a kata is no good if you're not knowing what you're actually doing. This means nothing unless I can see that I'm actually cutting you. I know that I'm cutting you. I know that I'm going for the head, but I've got to feel like it is. I've got to know that somebody's behind me. So what it teaches you is awareness when you're doing a kata more than anything else, and doing those angulations correctly. When we did Endgame, that was one of the things that was important for me to understand, that when I'm turning around, I'm not just turning around because there's another guy there. I need to know that I'm blocking and then going into my next attack. So it took a while to do that kata. That kata actually started, well, it started way back in Romania. I was supposed to film it in Romania. And then when we got moved to London, I think I've mentioned this before, I had a shoulder injury, and I said I don't really want to go doing all this training to consistently do this without knowing I'm actually going to perform the kata. So I was told I was going to do it in London, so I trained for it in London, and it never got shot. So I was a little upset about that. But we shot it again, or finally, when we ended up in Luxembourg. So that it was in a warehouse that we were doing a couple of the other takes for, and it went off okay, but it was shorter than it was. It seems pretty short, but you want to make sure that it looks good. As I tell people when we do the Sword Experience or anything in life, it's better to do a short amount of stuff really well than a whole bunch of stuff kind of like half-hearted or not doing it correctly, because it doesn't do you or anybody else any good when you do it that way. So that kata was it was important to do. Now, some of you might go, oh my God, look, he's got a moon behind him. Oh, look, he's got yes, we are in Halloween. It's Halloween coming up next week. So what are you going to be for Halloween? My daughter said to me last night, she said, you didn't do anything for Halloween last night. I said, well, last year, did you? I said, yeah, I think we dressed up as a cowboy. She said, no, you didn't. You just put a hat on and walked out. Because we went with some friends, and I was like, I just couldn't be bothered. But what are you going to be for Halloween? You're going to be a Sword Experience ninja? What are you going to be? I don't know. But that's why we have this set today. We're going to time a themify. Themify. Anyway, so that's why you're looking like this today. This is we just wanted to get you in the spirit of things. All right, here's a quick discussion. We're going to talk about, somebody asked, were the Sword Experience trainers and the Bokans and all that, the Ravenblades, intended to be falcons? Well, obviously the Ravenblade is not a falcon, it's a raven. So, and yes, some of them were. It comes from the tattoo I have here. Falcons or ravens. The birds tend to have, I think, a meaning in my history. And so, yes, they were intended to be that. And we want to make sure that that is a theme that we go through. We may bring other birds of prey into the Sword Experience designs later on, but for now, the falcon and the ravens are pretty much the standard look that we're going to be going for, as well as the fact, obviously we started our very first Sword Experience Boken that was engraved with all the places that we'd been. What we found was that it was a little rough in the hands, and if you were using it for 2 or 3 hours, you start getting a little bit of wear on the hands. So we've gone to a slightly smoother design, on all of the ones now, so we're bringing it down a little bit to actually be a little bit easier in the grip, in the hands. So we've been looking at those things quite intently as to all the feedback we're getting. That's why we need feedback, right? Okay, another question. Somebody says, any other character from another show that I'd like to play, current or past? You know, The Witcher, The Immortal. And I'm like, yeah, I mean, it's funny because working to me, it's funny because characters to me are, there are some characters I think, oh, I could have done that. That would have been great to do. I mean, I'd love to have been in Lord of the Rings, or, you know, even to a degree. And it's funny because I probably wouldn't have said this 20 years ago or 25 years ago, the Star Wars franchise, because back then Star Wars was just coming out and it was still regarded as a B movie to start with, in a sense. A lot of the sci-fi stuff hadn't been developed, the visual effects and what you could do. So in the acting world, it wasn't necessarily the best thing to do, as wasn't TV. TV was never a thing that big actors on film did. You're a TV actor or you're a film actor, that's it. There's no crossover. Today, however, that crossover is massive. And you see great actors doing TV series. And in fact, I think the content on TV is actually even better than it is in film sometimes. So because you have a series of writers writing it. The only issue I have with some TV shows is that once you get into season 2, 3 or 4, it becomes done by rote. And by that I mean, you know what the plot sequences are. There's no really surprises. They don't have time to write certain things. So they kind of just arbitrarily do the same stuff that they've been doing. And what they're banking on are the fans just to want to consistently watch it. Now, I consistently watched Game of Thrones. I've seen the new one and I like it. I like it. House of the Dragon. It's interesting, but House of the Dragon would be. I'd love to play some of those characters. They're just fun to play. I like period pieces most of the time. I also like characters like James Bond would be fun to play just because he's funny as well. But you know, things have changed a lot, so I don't think I'd necessarily want to stay in the sci-fi world. But you know, roles come up, and somebody go, "Oh, I really like that role." There's a role I just read for the other day, which I really enjoyed. The role itself, whether I get it or not, doesn't matter. I kind of enjoyed it. So I just think it depends on when you find these things, you know, and decide to play them and see what touches you. I think a lot of the time. I'm glad to see Priscilla's here. I understand you are here, Priscilla. So if you've got any questions, send them over. Hopefully your knee is better, because I know it is. Somebody else asked me, what is Adrian like in real life? I don't know. What is he like in real life? I have no idea. What? I am real. Like, I'm not like a plastic character. I am coming to you live at the moment. That's why it's called live. So I'm kind of like this. I mean, in real life, if you want, you know, I guess the question comes down to the fact of how am I with people rather than being a celebrity. And I think, you know, in real life, I do the same mistakes a lot of people make. I get too angry sometimes. I don't take my time. I try and be as kind as I can with people. I try and make sure that the people work as hard as I do, which is probably a fault because I work ridiculously hard. And sometimes I'm with my son, he's 10. I sometimes want to see his work rate as much as mine, but I can't expect him to do that. So sometimes I have to pull myself back. And I think having children, those of you that have children will understand what I'm going to say, is that my patience level has definitely changed now that I've become a father, because you can't automatically go, what do you mean? What do you mean? You know, you have to go, okay, you're not understanding this. Let me be patient and try and explain it this way or this way or this way. So your patience level has to go up. Otherwise, you're going to have a terrible time with your kids. In real life, I think, you know, I am I believe in getting a job done. I believe that you work hard to achieve a goal that you have in mind, and it doesn't matter whether it's not appearing right then and there. It's the fact that you're constantly going at it, and eventually the rewards will come. Don't think that life is just going to sort of sit there and go, okay, I didn't make it this time, I'm useless, I can't do it. You could do it 5, 10, 15 times. I've auditioned for 20, 30 pieces and never gotten one of them. And then finally you get one job that suddenly brings you into everybody's, oh my gosh, yes, of course, I know that person, I know who that actor is. So you got to remember, it's never this. For most careers are never that. So working hard at it, you know that you'll be successful eventually at what you do, as long as you make the right choices. And remember, those choices, as I tell people, and I tell my son this all the time, you can go off and do this if you want. But remember, this is the path. You're going to have a choice to either go in this direction or go in this direction. You can't say once you've gone in this direction, oh, no, I can't, I should have been doing. No, because you've made the choice already. And then you'll have another choice to make, and then you'll have another choice. So the person you are today is based on the choices you've made in the past. So I wouldn't, and that's what I think I'm trying to come to terms with always, because yes, I think, oh, I could have done this, oh, I wish I'd done that, oh, but you can't live your life like that. A couple of times I've literally sat there sometimes going, oh, wish this had happened. But then I think, well, you know what? It didn't. So get over it and get on with it. So yeah, I thought, get over it and get on with it. There you go. All right. So what time are we at right now? I think we're coming close. I'm going to go into one more before. I'm probably going to get into the all the stuff on Zorro. I want to talk a little bit about, somebody says, did I keep any of the props from the show? And did any of the guest stars take the props? I'm sure they did. I basically have a couple of the pieces from Highlander. I have one of the original swords. It's actually all scratched up. I have the jacket I wore on set for 5 or 6 seasons. That jacket has all the patches of each. Some of you have seen me wear it in photos and that. So I still have that jacket, and I haven't worn it in so long. I kind of find myself, think to myself, why am I wearing it? Why is this like me saying, hey, listen, I'm the Highlander? But so it's kind of a memento thing now. I kind of kept it. I might wear it once in a while, but you know, I don't think I've worn it in years. So those things I kept, and the other thing I kept are friendships. I think that is the most important thing I kept from the show. I just literally had breakfast with Elizabeth Grayson 3 days ago, and God bless Lizzie. It was because I was actually doing the Highlander memories, and you know, that was fun to see, because I actually got onto Lady and the Tiger, and then seeing Lizzie, I was like, oh my God, I haven't spoken to her in a while. As I've said before, put your karma out there and it will come back. Literally within 2 days. Hey, honey, how you doing? I haven't talked to you in a while. I'm like, oh, hey, Lizzie, oh my gosh. You know, so I thought about it and then went, oh, yeah, there it is. I manifested it. There we go. All right, so we're going to go on to doing something now. We're going to start, I'm going to work a little bit now onto what we're going to be talking a little bit more about today, and then I might answer a couple more questions. But we're going to do this all in once, because there's a lot of information that I can bring to you on this, and I don't know if you knew a lot of this information. We're going to talk about the Zorro series of films. Now, the Zorro series of films, they started way back in the 1920s. It was from a novel, a novella written by Johnston McCulley, who create these books, and then they said, oh, let's make a film out of it, which they do all the time. And the very first person to do that, play that part, was Douglas Fairbanks. And from that point on, there's been, I think it's something like 15, I don't know, it's probably, I don't know how many actors have actually played Zorro. There's a lot of them. Actually, I could go through them. Douglas Fairbanks, Robert Livingston in 1936, Reed Hadley in 1939, Tyrone Power in 1940. I don't know if you guys know Tyrone Power. He was a heartthrob back in the 40s and 50s. and my mom used to love him. He's actually one of those characters. Jose Suarez in 1953 played him. Guy Williams did the TV series, which was in 1957 to 1959. That actually had something like 88, I think it was 80 something episodes. It had a number of episodes, and we're going to get to him in a second because he's one of the ones I want to highlight today. And then there's Frank Langella. Many of you know Frank Langella. I didn't even know he did. I actually also think he did Casanova as well, but he did a movie in 1974. George Hamilton did Zorro the Gay Blade, which didn't do as well, but I mean, he played that tongue-in-cheek type of Zorro. Then there was Rodolfo de Anda, the Mexican version in 1976 that did that. Duncan Regehr now Duncan Regehr actually did the series. He did another series from 1990 to 1993. That was 80 something episodes, 88 episodes as well. He's synonymous with that particular album, probably the same as I'm synonymous with Highlander. Then there's obviously the big one which everybody now remembers because it is the latest one, is the 1998 version with Antonio Banderas and Anthony Hopkins. Now both of those played Zorro because Anthony Hopkins played the old Zorro and Anthony Banderas played the Mexican thief who basically was trained to be the new Zorro. But Zorro's not just been done just in English, it's been done in other languages. In 1975, Alain Delon did it in French and as a French-Italian co-pro, and Christian Meyer did a Spanish telenovela in 2007, and just recently, so here we go. And I always wonder about this because I always wonder why they tend to bring these out all at the same time. But they have Miguel Bernardo is just been cast in April of 2022 for a Prime Video series on the subject. And then earlier in December 2021, we had Wilmer Valderrama was actually penned to do an ABC series on that. I don't know where those two stand right now, but those things are going to come out with new Zorro episodes. And it always makes me, I always wonder to myself, why is it that you get like 4 disaster movies coming out at once, or now 2 Zorro series coming out at once? What do they speak to each other and go, you know what, we're going to do this, and go, that's a good idea, we'll do it on our network too. I always wondered about that, but you know, it's a it's kind of bizarre that. Okay, those are the guys that did Zorro. There have been 40 different adaptations of Zorro in this series of films, so even more than Highlander, really. 40 different films, etc., since the 1920s to actually do this thing. Now, I want to talk to you before we go into the 3 I want to look at. The 3 I'm going to look at this morning will be the series, the 1957 series, the Mark of Zorro, which is done in 1940, and as well as the Mask of Zorro, which was done in 1998. A lot of people have asked about the swords in Zorro's. Now, the swords in Zorro, usually they were either you had the foil, the 3 different types: the foil, the epee, and the saber. So what's the difference between them? Well, usually the foil is more a thrusting weapon. It's a more pointed weapon. It was, when they did it, it's a rounded edge weapon that has a tip to it. And usually in foil fencing, you're only supposed to touch what do we call it? You could strike the opponent and score them in the torso. That was basically the target that you had to use, was the torso. And the reason why it was called foil, it was actually rolled steel. It was a raw rolled foil. That's why it was called that. Now the epee is very similar to the foil, except it's a little heavier. And the points scored there was striking pretty much anywhere you could do on the tip of the sword, like the arm, anywhere else. The saber was now a flat and wider and can be used for cuts as well. Now, if you're looking at the swords that they used in Zorro, in the very first one, such as Guy Williams, he was always shown with a saber type sword. It was a short sword with a slight flat edge to it, and very bendy type of sword, not like a regular sword that you cannot bend, but very flexible and moving. So those are the type of swords that they use, which is very different than we use in the Highlander. In the Highlander 2, but in the sword experience, which is now more of a katana type of thing. So I want to talk first of all about the before we talk about the Mark of Zorro, before we get to that, I want to talk a little bit about Douglas Fairbanks, because Douglas Fairbanks, usually performed all his stunts. He was very, very well known to do this. Now, so actors did their own stunts way back then and continue to do so to this day. He's actually one of the founders of the Academy of Motion Pictures and Sciences. So he's well ingrained. He was an excellent athlete, and he used all his physical abilities to the best of his advantage. So the guy was he a swordsman? Probably to a degree. You get. I think he was more physical than anything else. I want to get to the Mark of Zorro first, because the Mark of Zorro, actually, I'm going to pull my papers up here, because this is the Mark of Zorro obviously had, as you can see here, you have the in this picture, that's the this is actually them fighting. I didn't want to quite get to this quite this quick, but that's okay. The Mark of Zorro here has both Douglas, it has Tyrone Power and Basil Rathbone fighting here, and what you see in this thing is that both of them are very adept. Tyrone Power was an excellent swordsman. Basil Rathbone, who was known as a fencer, as a competitive fencer, said that between Errol Flynn and Tyrone Power, Tyrone was probably a better swordsman than him. And you can kind of tell that in the way that they went backwards and forwards with each other. It wasn't just tack, 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 tack. It was like, I'm going to get you. No, you're not. I'm going to try this. If you looked at the way that they were fighting then, it was, and especially with Rathbone, Rathbone's very good at making it look like he's really attacking somebody, but he's doing it safely because he's stopping here. He's not cutting through it this way, although he could, but he does make that effort to move forward that makes that fight look extremely real. And obviously he is was an excellent swordsman at the time. So to have these guys do this type of fight made it realer to the audience. And obviously the Mark of Zorro was actually one of the top 3 adaptations of Zorro that was ever made. So I wanted to highlight that one, because I think also it's, the Mark of Zorro was one of those things that for the time, you'll think of the 1940s, this was during the war. So the escapism of being able to do something that was the bad guy, coming to being beaten by the good guy, was probably very relevant at that time. So I think a lot of the time films come out because of their relevancy. I told you I can't talk today. The relevancy of the material for that time. You look at some of the films that are coming out today, the same thing applies. We want to get to the 1957 version of Zorro. Now, this was a series that was done the lead guy was Guy Williams. Guy Williams also did Bonanza. He did Lost in Space. He was a very good looking guy, had a very good career. And he was very physical. He was a swordsman. This one, now, if you know Zorro's story, this particular one was actually set in Los Angeles in the 1820s, while it was still part of the Spanish California. And that was actually before the Mexican independence, where Zorro now aids the Hispanic and the indigenous peoples to, overcome the oppressive rulers, which is similar to the background of the original Zorro. Again, it's always about the underdog. It's about the underdog, or the person standing up for the underdog. That's what the series has nothing to do with the sword. It has to do with the subject matter. And that's what we're watching. And that's why it's done so well, is because we always want the underdog, or somebody that is oppressed, to come up and succeed and be better than the persons that are oppressing us. And so we should look at that today a little bit, think about that today. I want to take a little bit, a quick look. We'll take a little work because their sword work was consistent in this. If you're looking at this, the guy on the right isn't a great swordsman. He's okay, but he's thrashing it around, and this is a much more finesse type of weapon. And you can see how they, if you look at how Guy Williams was operating that sword, he was very close. It wasn't flailing it out here. He was very tight, and he knew. If you also take a look at that, if you want to go back, because they are releasing this series again on Disney Plus, they will be releasing this particular series. If you look at the way he used the more technical stuff was actually given to Guy Williams. For him to do the bind that he did when the guy thrust through the bind and catch it here, etc., is not easy. You have to practice that many times to do that. So it takes some skill to be able to do that. And I'm sure that, you know, he was known as a swordsman, and it wasn't just overnight that he did it. So his two of them, that it wasn't just being an actor that was sufficient. They needed to be a swordsman to perform this role correctly, because especially in a series like this, you had the consistency of it being done week in, week out, very much like Highlander was, etc. So, but again, the interesting thing is, if you watch this particular film, what you'll see is that there's a little bit of humor thrown into it. It's kind of the foolhardy type of humor that this series kind of had as well in it. You know, Commandant, come out, please, come out, yeah. And so it was a little bit like that. But you know, the fun it had was, it almost was tongue in cheek to the fact that it wasn't real, but the sword work was actually very well done. And you know, obviously it was about Zorro also getting the girl. This was kind of the James Bond of the sword era, if you like. And so this was a fun series to watch, him going in each week. But I think it did very well, and that's why they're re-releasing it. So I would take a look at it if you want, because it's an interesting subject matter. The last one, The Mask of Zorro. Let's talk about this one. This one here, you know, obviously has three great stars in it. It's got Catherine Zeta-Jones, it's got Antonio Banderas, and obviously Anthony Hopkins. Anthony Hopkins came in as a replacement, and he decided, actually, when he was doing this, he was playing the old Zorro, teaching this new Zorro. So this was a different angle on this. This was a Spaniard teaching a Mexican who was, you know, not very well-to-do, and played by, obviously, Antonio Banderas, showing him what it was like to become Zorro. Now, if you look at the film, they were very specific about certain things here. They were specific about the clothes. The costume designer made sure that Antonio Banderas' clothes were more Mexican in design, and Anthony Hopkins were more Spanish in design. The sword work was very good, because there's a lot of great sword work in a lot of these things here, and obviously this was choreographed by my dear old friend Bob Anderson, and Bob was a fantastic teacher, taught a lot of us, as well as Antonio Banderas, the sword. And in a second, when we cut to the clip, you'll see what I mean by him, because he had a natural gift for the sword. Some people do. And it doesn't matter about whether they're older, younger, taller, shorter, skinnier, fatter. It doesn't matter. You just have what you understand it. There's something about it. I think it's also in our genes. But Antonio Banderas was very good in it. I mean, this particular film was nominated for 2 Oscars. It had 9 wins and 19 nominations. So it was obviously doing something very, very well. And you know, Bob Anderson said that Antonio Banderas was probably one of the most gifted swordspeople with whom he'd ever worked with since Errol Flynn. You know, and so for Bob to say that, it's a great compliment. Trust me, because I know. I mean, I know Bob. He doesn't give them away easily, or he never used to. So that was an interesting thing to see Bob do it. Now, also Banderas also trained for about 4 months with the Spanish Olympic fencing team. So he did his homework, and you will see this. We're going to cut to a quick clip now, because what we have here is the clip where he actually picks up 2 swords. So to do 2 swords is not that easy to do, and you can see here he's fighting with both of them, left-handed and right-handed, and comes out of it looking, you know, spectacular. Obviously, I don't think they did a huge amount of it, because to fight 2 people with left hand there is difficult. And the other fact is, the move he did there wasn't necessarily smart, because when you have 2 opponents, you don't want to have them both facing you. You want them to stack, because that way you're only fighting one at a time. So as an opponent, you want to make sure, or as the defender, you want to make sure you're turning yourself around to make sure that those 2 opponents are now stacking up. He went straight through the middle of them. That was the film portion of it. But you know, the technical stuff he did in it was also very good, because he fought both of them, obviously right-handed. And the blade work was very good. It was fast, furious. It was turning around. Obviously, Bob put in some flair, because we are doing a movie. When I talk about this at the Sword Experience events, I say we're not doing a real fight. It's got to look like a real fight. So the choreography has to be there, but it also has to be enjoyable. It has to mean something. And Bob was very, very specific about choosing moments in a fight that were part of the story, but also part of the action. The action supported the story. And when you watch that film later on, you'll see that, you know, these consistencies that he did in Highlander, he did in a lot of different films that he did, Lord of the Rings, they made sense because he was using the set to be part of one of the characters in the story that you were telling. You know, there was actually there's also a fun thing here, because, you know, CGI back then was a little bit difficult, and there's another nice little piece here that I've actually got in my notes here, that you know, there's a piece in it when Zorro confronts Captain Love and the sword glints in it. Well, today you just do this and the CGI just puts in that glint. They didn't have that then. So when they did it, it took them 3 takes, only 3 takes, for Banderas to actually get it in the right light for that sword to glint in the light. So those things are always fun. It's a challenge as an actor when you're doing things. Can you do this? Oh yeah, sure, I can do it. But then you find that it's not exactly quite as easy. But obviously he did it very well, because it only took him 3 takes to actually get that glint perfect for the camera. Just a little tidbit. Do you have any questions about Zorro? Because I'm here to answer them. We've got probably about another 10 minutes of the live to go, and we'll go and answer a few more other questions. But these actors, as you can see, there have been many, many actors in Zorro that have taken this from one type of thing to another. You've got Zorro the Gay Blade, you've got it in Spanish, you've got it in English, you've got it as a Mexican character, you've got it as a Spanish character. The theme is always the same. The underdog, or that somebody stands up for the underdog and the oppressed, and that's part of our nature, and we believe that to be the foundation of what we do. And if you look at it, The Count of Monte Cristo, which was an amazing series of books, which I read the whole series of The Count of Monte Cristo and the Casanova series. But the Count of Monte Cristo was really the foundation of many modern day stories. Most of the films and TV series today have what was based in the Count of Monte Cristo itself. It was about betrayal. It was about a man being wrongly accused. It's about his succession into becoming wealthy and the revenge he has that then turns into an understanding of what his life could or should have been, or the correct choices he has to make to become the person he said he wasn't ever going to be, which is an oppressive tyrant. So he turns into it to a degree, and then decides that, oh my gosh, you know, I should behave this way. So there are a lot of things that are identifiable in Zorro to that basic thing. So, and I think that's why we we have the connection to these things, because a lot of the time we look at those things and they have to mean something in our lives. Now, I know a lot of you have said there's the similarity and differences between Zorro. What are those similarities? I've got one of the questions there. The similarities, I think, are that, you know, he never gave up, and that, you know, he stood up for Justice. Same thing as McLeod did. Exact same type of thing McLeod did. The difference being is that McLeod was never doing it with quite the same type of flair. He's much more grounded and much more set in reality. I mean, somebody once said to me a little while ago about, when Hercules was playing and Highlander was playing, and the type of production that each of those was different. They were both successful but different. Same thing with Zorro and Highlander. They were similar but different types of entities because the way it was approached and the way it was executed. The other similarity, obviously, we both have swords in Zorro and Highlander. I use a variety of things. I think the difference is I use a variety of different blades when I was fighting, whereas Zorro uses one type of blade. That's that one blade, and that's the blade he has. I use the katana. I went and used the claymore. I used the basket hilt Scottish sword. I used a lot of different weapons, and you really get to understand what those weapons are used for. So that would be another difference between the two of them. I think the similarities are that they both went into series from a film. They both had two successful series. Zorro had in 1957, and the one with Duncan Regehr from 1990 to 1993, which is pretty similar to when Highlander was working at the time. And so a lot of things that were very, very similar at that point. Somebody else asked me, do I wish I'd managed time differently during the first and the fifth seasons of Highlander? The interesting fact is that I go back to what I said earlier on. Probably the answer would be yes to that, but do I regret it? No, because I made the choice at that particular time to have my time handled that way in season 1 and my time handled this way in season 5. I was very, very focused when I did Highlander to start with. Did I do all the right things? No, I didn't. They were not the right choices sometimes, and I learned as I went along. But that's part of it, part of the action. Did season 5, was I different in season 5 than I was in season 1? Of course. I had so much more experience. I had so much more time to spend on the character. So there were a lot of differences between season 1 and season 5. And managing my time, I think when you're given the opportunity, it doesn't matter what it is, whether it's a series, whether it's a job, whatever, you can't just go, yeah, well, I've got this job. And you've got to go, okay, I'm going to make it even better than what I was intended. Okay, you're going to be a nurse. Well, does that mean, yeah, well, I'm a nurse, I'm supposed to turn up at 9, I'll go and do this thing and I'll go and do that. Well, maybe you should turn up at 8:45. Maybe you want to get there a little early. Maybe there's a couple of extra things you can do. This applies to everything we do. And the same thing applied to Highlander. I was always on time. Eventually I wasn't, because I knew basically I'd be sitting in my trailer for 2 hours, probably, depending on who the director was. But so sometimes I'd turn up about 20 minutes, half an hour late sometimes for makeup, because I knew I was going directly on set and I knew what my time was. But initially, I was always there first. I always trained hard. I always went through the scripts in my off time. So I was working every day on set, and then I would work at night for a couple of hours at least to get it done. It's. I watched a documentary the other day. Actually, it was something on Instagram, and it had the comment by Kobe Bryant, and Kobe said, let's take a look at training. When you train, you get up in the morning, you go from 9 o'clock in the morning to 11. You train for 2 hours. You then go to have something to eat. You go up, you go out, you train again from maybe 2 to 4, and then you basically go to eat, and then you go to bed. So you've trained twice in a day. But imagine if I get up at 3 o'clock in the morning to 5 o'clock in the morning, and I train then, and then I go to breakfast, and then I train again from 9 to 11, and then I go to have something to eat, and then I train again from 3 to 4, and then again from 7 to 5. I have trained 4 times in that day, twice as much as anybody else has. And by the time I'm finished, after 4 or 5 years, it doesn't matter what anybody else does. Doesn't matter what they do. They will never be better than what I do, because I've had so much more time and so much time practicing my craft. That's why Kobe Bryant was so big. Same thing applies to anything else you do here. Whether it's Highlander season 1 or season 5, I was always fighting as hard as I could to get myself as good as possible. And I think you are given a short window. You don't always, that window is never going to be forever. When you're given something, take advantage of it. I learned from John Landis, you're only as good as your last project. So you take advantage of that last project that you have. All right, last question I'm going to take right now is, do I speak any other languages? Ma sì, davvero devo parlare. Je peux parler français aussi. También. Ich spreche ein bisschen Deutsch, ist nicht mal. And heute wie geht's? So I got a couple of different ones here and there. I can do little pieces in German. I mean, little pieces in German and Hungarian, and I can understand a couple of things in both those languages. Spanish I speak semi-fluent, Italian I'm fluent in Italian. I'm fluent in French, and sometimes I speak English. So basically, hopefully that answers your questions, and hopefully you'll send us some of your information as to what you guys want to see on the sword experience, or Inner Circle, that we have. I hope this was an interesting episode for you, because it's it's been it's always fun for us to kind of put things together, but it's based on what you guys want. Somebody had asked us about Zorro. I thought, oh, it's a great one to sort of highlight. Is there anything else you'd want to see? Is there anything else you want me to focus on, whether it's sword work or whether it's a film series or whether it's something that might be of interest to you? I think some of the fun things we find, and I think I've heard this many times from fans, are the things that they didn't know were happening on set. How many times an actor was training, what time they went to bed at night, whether they were good on set, whether they got into trouble when they were off doing something when they shouldn't have been. There's all those different things that happen in sets and in film series and on sets that I kind of find is interesting, because a lot of the time, even I don't know things that I'm not that I'm enrolled in the middle of the industry anymore, but some of the things that you find out later I find fascinating, because really. But what it's really interesting I always find is that if you really want it done well, you've got to be consistent and you've got to put your heart into it. So with that said, we will have another live in November, and that will be just before our Christmas one that we'll be having. So expect the November one. I don't know what we're going to do for background. Maybe I'll take you into the living room. Maybe I'll be inside a pumpkin. I don't know. It wouldn't be that one. I don't know. No, Thanksgiving. I'll have 2 turkey legs sticking out. Something like that. Anyway, be well. I hope to listen to your stuff. Look at all the events we got coming up. We've got one in Washington coming up, in Seattle. We've got one coming up in Ohio in an illuminated mine. It's going to be interesting. We're inside a mine. We're probably training outside and then going to the mine for the finale. And so we've got a couple of other ones. I've got one coming up in Ohio this coming weekend, which is going to be at the National Veterans Museum in Ohio, which is an amazing building. So I'm really excited about this and excited to bring you guys there, because that one again is going to be an interesting militaristic themed type of event, which will have the techniques as well as the discipline that you need to actually be a soldier. And so I think that's going to be. I'll bring you a surprise anyway on that one. So check us out. We've got lots coming up, and send us your information if you want to hear anything about or you want us to go somewhere in the new year in February or March where we can do something indoors, or we go to Hawaii and do it. What do you think? How many of you come to Hawaii?